I think some people who don't know anything about it are talking. There are two issues involved. One is that the Central Vista project and of itself was approved in September 2019. That is way before there was talk of COVID even in China, let alone anywhere else. Secondly, there are only two components in this which are being currently pursued. One is the new parliament building, for which there has been a demand since 2012. And the current parliament building has in fact run into great difficulties. Even in 2012, when there was a Congress government here, the Speaker of the Parliament wanted a new building, and she had taken a decision to that effect. And next year we celebrate the 75th anniversary of India's independence, and there is not enough space there. The Parliament building used to be in seismic zone 2. Now it is in seismic zone 4. God forbid, if there's a tremor on the Richter scale, which is even slightly above normal, the building will have serious difficulties. Therefore, and we have currently a freeze on the number of parliament members, but in 2026 that freeze will be lifted, and we will go from 540 plus currently to 750. So there is absolutely no issue on the new parliament building.
Right, sir. There were reports doing the rounds that the number going into this entire project was $2.5 billion or 20,000 crores, and critics as well as the opposition, as you highlighted, are arguing that that money could have been spent towards COVID relief efforts. What's your take on that?
The entire cost of the project, which has to be undertaken over a 5 or 6 year period, that entire cost of the project was not more than 13,400 crores as given an initial estimate. And the real cost you find out only when you do the tendering and you get the competitive quotes on it. Second issue, the entire project consists of 10 massive buildings which will house the Central Secretariat. Just now, the Government of India's 51 ministries and departments are strewn all over the city of Delhi. Those 51 departments will come in one place, 10 big buildings, a new conference center, a new Indira Gandhi Center for Performing Arts, a new residence for the Vice President, new residence for the Prime Minister, all these things together along with the Central Vista Avenue, that is not going to cost 13,400 crores. By the way, I did some homework before I came on your show, and I looked at when countries which became independent or acquired new governing independence, countries like the United States, United Kingdom, South Korea, Philippines, Switzerland, Sri Lanka, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia constructed their new parliament building. It was within a few years. Even Sri Lanka completed its building in 1982. We are in 2021. The current parliament building, Tanvi, was conceived in 1920, which is 100 years ago. And it's all pre-COVID, number one. And number two, there's no relationship on expenditure for COVID. We've already earmarked 35,000 crores for the COVID vaccine. And as my colleague, the finance minister, has happily gone on record, if more money is required for vaccine, it will be made available. We have paid the two existing domestic manufacturers, Serum Institute and Bharat Biotech, advance money to produce vaccines for the whole of May, June and July. We're already past May. And the amount which will be available from July onwards to August, September, October, November, December, those were the figures which actually would produce 213 crore additional vaccine, which is more than the population of India. But meanwhile, we are signing even with other manufacturers. We are at a very advanced stage with some of the other vaccine manufacturers. So your short answer to your question is absolutely confident of being able to meet these targets by December. And way before that.
The government has also reportedly, and as you have pointed out, spent nearly $5 billion on vaccinations. I want to understand how much more do you think will be needed given the risk of a potential third wave and also booster shots in the future?
What we are doing is uniquely positioned now to deal with these challenges as they emerge. But it would be very wrong of me to sit here and say we are fully prepared. Look, we've increased the oxygen supply, the number of beds, the number of medical workers, the medicines required, and the vaccines also. And if booster shots are required, madam, in our country, I mean, you know a little bit about it, there were people fueling vaccine hesitancy. They were deliberately going out of their So we have a problem. In some rural areas, people say, well, if you get vaccinated, you may end up with, a set of other problems. Well, these are stories you hear in other countries also. But I think through proper dissemination and education, vaccination is necessary. Government is going about it. And, just now 2 shots of the serum vaccine or 1 shot of the others which become available, we will play it as we go along. But we are reasonably confident that we have the situation under control.
How much has the healthcare system ramped up with adequate medical supplies and oxygen supplies in the event of a serious third wave?
Look, on oxygen, we had increased the oxygen supply, I think, 2.5 times already. Now we have enough oxygen that we are diverting some of it back to industrial purposes. In India, we also have a geographical issue. All the oxygen manufacturing plants are in the east of India. And the transportation, it's a large country, so you have to transport them by rail or by surface transport, by truck, by surface roads to the north, central, and other parts of India. But I think we have it all mapped out now. If a third wave comes, and when it comes, depending on the requirements, our capacity to again repurpose and again to convert back to dealing with it, I think that infrastructural capacity is there. Well, I'm not entirely sure whether the criticism when it comes. Well, first of all, I said all super spreader events should not take place, let me tell you. Some of these super spreader events take place because there is an inherent desire in people to want to celebrate. When the clampdown took place in New York for the first time, I remember people came out and protest. It also led to looting, including on Fifth Avenue, because people don't like to be bottled down. So one is an individual behavioral thing, and I think the Prime Minister of India has been upfront in every meeting with chief ministers. I remember at meeting with chief ministers, which he took on 16th March, Tanviji, he said, second wave is coming, second wave is coming, second wave is coming, get prepared. And yet, because unless, water is beginning to enter your nostrils, people didn't take that seriously. But in any case, I think the message has been driven home. Some of these super spreader events that you are referring to are of a religious kind. Religious kind where, people collect for a mela, or there is a cleric who passes away and, people go in a funeral procession. That's different. Insofar as politics, when the wave figures hit, I think they cancel the election rally. You can always have an argument whether it should have been cancelled 1 or 2 days earlier or, it doesn't make a difference. But by the way, the political rallies were taking place in a state. That state is not showing those high figures. Now, if there's a spread there. So, governance in a country of India's size and with India's challenges is a slightly more difficult thing than in smaller population which have all also higher degrees of 100% education. We have 100% education in some parts of India, but people are more emotional and they tend to respond to their own needs.
No, and you have a point, sir. This pandemic has not come with a playbook for any government, any administrative body, any community, and everyone has made their share of mistakes. I think why the disappointment with India is because India done a very good job with the first wave, and so the expectation was high and the confidence was there that it could be repeated with the second wave. And given the emotional toll the second wave has had on lives, on people, the anguish, the pain, the anger there, I guess the larger issue, the bigger question is, could this have been averted, or could this have been mitigated, so to speak, by avoiding some of these events?
I have a very simple answer for you, Tanvi. When it comes to something which is, I think, where the virus is the enemy, and this is a once in a century challenge, I think judgment on how countries fare should be done over an extended period of time. We came out with flying colors after the first wave. If you were having this conversation with me 2 weeks earlier, you might have a different. Now I can tell you with confidence, India's recovery rate today is very high. It is over 90%. The recovery rate. The mortality rate is also very low. I think it's what 1.2% in Delhi and a slightly higher mortality rate. Now, I don't want to belittle the fact, as far as I'm concerned, one death is one death too many. But the criticism is you have to compare like products. Produce similar. You don't go and compare a country with India size. But as I said, the discourse even here has changed. Today, I think people can say with confidence, I used to get 100 calls every day for help, oxygen cylinders, people wanting essential medicine, because when things go wrong, but that's the same that happens everywhere else, in the United Kingdom, in Japan, and elsewhere. But the situation now, both in terms of infrastructural revamping, first wave we did very well, second wave, because in spite of all the modeling we had got done in US universities elsewhere, nobody expected a spike as serious as 400,000 cases plus in a day. We didn't expect it. We prepared. When these cases were going up, we got an American university professor of Indian origin to do the modeling, and she said it probably will go up to 100,000 when it was almost low, when we saw the beginning. We prepared for 300,000. But then when the spike took place, it went way beyond. I think one of the figures was 425,000 in a day. So we learn. Now I know of hospitals who tell me, we've ramped up the infrastructure, we've got all these beds. What do? We can't maintain the expenditure. See, I think we've, to the extent that, it's learning experience. But I think by the time the third wave comes, I hope we are all equally well prepared for it. And also our experience in terms of lockdown. The first wave came, we locked down just totally. So the first quarter of the last financial year, Tanvi, we contracted by 23.9%. Now in our last quarter, for which we just got the result, the economy actually grew by 1.4%. So these are experiences that we learn. But let's just hope that we get a handle on the virus, both globally and in countries like ours, where you live and where I live, and that when the time comes for the third wave, we'll be fully prepared for it.